The fact is that the liberal elite of the West used the taxpayers' money of United States citizens to spread their ideology all around the world, and financed in Hungary more than 60 NGOs, paid politicians, media outlets. So it was a plot against our sovereignty and independence. Sorry, made by you.
I know.
Sorry, but this is the case, and the same has happened from the Brazilian budget, which is even more scandalous, may I say, because we pay the money in the Brazilian budget and they finance our enemies at home. So what's going on? So this is the liberal deep state, the global liberal deep state, and now we see how it has operated.
It raises a deep question of motive. Why would anyone want to spread, deadly ideas like open borders or transgenderism? Hey, how about no grandchildren for you? How about, nobody reproduces anymore? What would be the motive for spreading poison like that?
We should be not naive, I think so. One motivation is always money. So that was a way how the American Democrats thought they can open the gates for their business activity. If they change the governments which insisting on having sovereignty and standing and fight for themselves, it's more difficult to find business possibilities for those speculators. Soros is a Hungarian guy. George Soros kind of speculators can find easier way to generate money and to make profit on your economy. So that's the number one motivation. But the second one, don't forget that leftists are always ideologically driven. And they believe certain things, which for us sounds crazy, even embarrassing, frightening. But they believe it. In Europe, probably it's difficult to understand, but I'm sure that the leaders of the left in Western Europe deeply convinced that if they let the migrants in, which are basically Muslims, poor Muslim persons, and let them to be combined with the traditional Christian society, and they manage a kind of integration, the outcome of this whole process will be a better and happier society. And that's the reason why George Soros published his plan. It was signed by himself, saying that the European Union should let 1 million migrants every year to move to Europe. And then, I always said that it belongs to the decision of the national government. So if the Germans or the French would like to make that historical research project, how to improve their society, let's do it. But let us, those who do not believe that the outcome will be a good thing, not to do that. So Hungary never tried to educate anybody how a society could be better or worse. We always said that, guys, let us to make our own decision. And to let migrants in or keep them out, it's exclusively belonging to our nations as a decision. So don't force us from Brussels or from Washington that migration is good, and those who are not let the migrants in definitely must be bad guys. So this is unacceptable. But that was the thing. But Donald Trump changed the mindset of the West. I think this is the key issue. So probably Donald Trump, president, will change the geopolitics as well. I hope so anyway. But he already made a huge change in the mindset of the political thinking of the West. Previously, they said migration is good. To resist to migration is bad. Now it's just the opposite. To defend your interest is good. Migration, illegal migration especially, is bad. Then on the Green Deal, they said green is good. Economic competitiveness does not count. Now it's obvious that economic competitiveness first and green issues just the second. And then on religious communities and values, Christianity in our case, it was said that it belonged to the Middle Age. They made us ridiculous several times, making jokes on us and so on. But now the president said it's a respectful thing. The community of the believers must enjoy respect, which is good for our society. Or then family in the West, the mindset was that family is also belonging to the past, and other configuration of living together persons is preferable. Now it's back. Traditional values are better than this whole thing. and gender, which is a crazy gender propaganda. Now it's publicly said it's bad. To defend traditional values is good. And war. You know, in Europe in the last 3 years, it was said always that war is good, peace is bad, concerning Ukraine-Russia war. So those who argued in favor of peace and peace negotiations and communication said, you are bad guys. The good guys are who are arguing in favor of war. So now it's totally changed. So Donald Trump, president, already changed the mindset of the whole Western world. That's where we are at this moment, and it's very good for Hungary.
Well, it's certainly a vindication for you. If I can just go back to something you said that Soros and his aligned NGOs and the movement that he represents has pushed these things because they sincerely believe them to be true. But they haven't pushed them on any nation outside the West. No one is pushing China to let in 1 million or 10 million relative to its size migrants a year, or India, or for that matter, Korea or Japan or the Philippines or any other country. It's only Western countries. Why, in their mind, is it only Western countries that need unrestricted migration?
That would request a deeper understanding of the intellectual history of the European political thinking. But there was always a strong leftist liberal community which was not proud being a Westerner. Always have perceived its own civilization as something bad. And their intention was not to make it stronger and to maintain and make it stronger, but rather to destroy, to improve by destroying. That's very communist idea, deleting the past. That was always the communist idea. So they don't like the West, they don't like their nation. Sometimes they are ashamed to belong to a nation because they think that nation is a bad thing. So if you think that nation is something good and you are proud of it and you think that you have to work for your nation to be competitive and better than the others, it's an awful Nazis, extreme right something. That's their approach. That's the tradition of the European left. And in the latest years, it was brutally witnessed in the everyday political discussion. So I'm a fascist, I'm sitting here like, I'm a bad guy. I'm a fascist. I am middle-aged, feudalistic, Christian radicals, so that's who is arguing for peace, which is the worst thing, yeah? That's absurd, may I say.
So this has been going on since the end of the last big war, so 80 years, and particularly migration. And so I think we can render some judgment. How has that worked for the big nations of Europe, for Britain, Germany, France? Can we look back and say that experiment was a success?
You mean...
Migration.
Migration?
Just unrestricted migration.
So we are living in, under a liberal dictatorship intellectually, but politically it's still, we are living in democracies. So public opinion counts. And I think now we have a problem of democracy because of the migration. It's not just a problem of migration, problem of democracy. Because if you have an elite which is not ready to accept the obvious public will of your voters, instead of accepting that, forcing against the population their own crazy ideas, it raised the problem of democracy. Because, so that's where we are. Because now there's a quite strong shift in the mindset of the Western societies. Previously, at the beginning of the mass migration period, I'm speaking about 2015, 2016, there were half and half of the societies, even probably more than half, was in favor of doing something good in favor of those who were considered as refugees. Then slowly but surely turned to be that they are not refugees, basically. They're changing their place. There are some of them refugees, but basically the majority of them would like to get a better life, simply. And they are organized by smugglers. It's an international black business, so it's an awful business. So, and now the terrorism, somehow related to this whole changes, just come up to the surface. It's never happened earlier. Terrorism was not part of the Western life anyway. If I remember back, the last one was in the 70s, some crazy communist Marxist group of Germany. But after that, terrorism is not part of the Western life. Violence of public life does not belong to us. But now terrorism is up. public order is dispersing. So now the society is against the mass migration policy. So Willkommenkultur, as it was called by Angela Merkel, now it's totally negative. And the problem is that the elite was so much committed to that ideology that now it's difficult to change their position. And that leads us to the problem of democracy. As we will see in Germany just soon, election is coming 2 weeks' time. So, and you probably have realized that there were some surprising discussion in the German parliament whether to change the migration regulation or not. And the public opinion said, 70% said, yes, you should change it. And they voted against it. So it's a problem of democracy. It's not just a problem of migration. It's not a problem of leadership. The whole structure and the system is under pressure at this moment.